Hello and welcome. I'm Jono Hayes and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. And these are our top stories. The US imposes sanctions on Russia, targeting their two largest oil companies. Putin's responded, calling them an unfriendly act. Marco Rubio arrives in Israel, becoming the latest US state official to visit the region during a shaky ceasefire. And making history, King Charles prays with Pope Leo at the Vatican, becoming the first British monarch to do so in 500 years. And first up, the US has announced new sanctions on Russia, specifically targeting their two largest oil companies. It's hoped the move will pressure Moscow into agreeing to a peace deal with Ukraine. Speaking from the White House, US President Donald Trump told reporters that he wanted the war to end after a planned meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin was shelved. Take a listen to this.
When we canceled the meeting with President Putin, it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future. Today is a very big day in terms of what we're doing. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. We would like to see them just take the line that has been formed over quite a long period of time and go and let's go home. Last week they had almost 8,000 soldiers killed. Many Russians were killed last week. Many Ukrainians were killed last week. We think it's ridiculous and would like to have it end. I can say is every time I speak with Vladimir, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere. So in that sense, but now look, he's fighting a war. He's in a war. That's two very competent sides, and that's the way war is. You never know with war, but I would say that it's time to make a deal. A lot of people are dying.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Shane McGinley here in the studio, news editor at Arabian Gulf Business Insight, and correspondent Sara Firth, who's joining us live from Washington. Thanks to both of you, home of the drama. Sara, first of all, let's go to you. Big move from the White House. Were you surprised over there in Washington by this announcement?
I think there was a bit of surprise, Jono, and there was definitely a sense of relief. Look, there have long been calls for President Trump to enact this step, to put sanctions on Russia. President Trump has held off until now. Even in the press conference yesterday at the White House, where he was meeting with the NATO Secretary General, he said, look, we hope that the sanctions won't be on for long. What these sanctions entail, it's the two major Russian oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, and it's hoped that really the oil revenues that fund, here the Trump administration say, the Russian war machine, by being targeted in this way, will make Russia really feel the pinch economically, and it's hoped bring them to the negotiating table. It matters. It is the first time President Trump's administration has put sanctions on in this way. They are major sanctions. The Treasury Secretary absolutely not mixing his words when he said that the sanctions have happened because of Russia's refusal to end what they call a senseless war. Look, here in Washington, guys, there has been a growing sense of President Trump's frustration with Russia, with Vladimir Putin himself. He said in the press conference again, the calls that I have with him don't go anywhere, and I felt like it was time. So it's a big announcement. It's hoped that eventually Russia will feel. It's not the first time we've been here. In 2022. The US put sanctions on Russia. Russia found some workarounds. But there is a feeling here in DC that the sanctions, along with other measures like military supplies to NATO countries that are then being passed to Ukraine, that maybe this will change the calculation for Russia moving forward.
I guess, Shane, the question is, and we'll go into what Vladimir Putin has said in a few minutes, is it really going to hurt the Kremlin? Is it going to bring the Kremlin to the table on this, and will Putin actually fold?
There's a lot to unpack in terms of with the impact that the sanctions will have on oil revenues, and so I looked at a lot of reports the last couple of hours, and there's one interesting comment from Rystad Energy, which is an Oslo-based sort of independent analysts, and they've said that so far the sanctions over the last 3.5 years have had very little impact on the volumes that have been produced or the revenue that Moscow has earned. And at the same time, the Kremlin has been downplaying the potential impact of this. They've said that oil and gas revenue is only about 27% of their budget. So they've said that percentage has been dropping. So they're kind of saying that their budgets are diversifying and this is not really going to have a huge impact. The market, if you look at today, the oil price went up 5%, so that kind of indicates that they do think that the big receivers of Russian oil, which is India and China, will adhere to what Trump wants. And I think if you first look at India and the two Russian sanctioned companies, 60% of the oil that comes from Russia comes from these guys. So that's a big impact from India, and there's reports saying that India is going to comply with what Donald Trump wants, which is the official Indian side. And then what benefits that as well is that the privately owned refiners in India are also looking to move away from Russian oil. And China, there's also reports on Reuters saying that they're going to reduce their Russian oil as well. So they're the two biggest buyers. But the problem is that it's not just a case of Trump calling up Delhi and Beijing and saying, "Can you stop using Russian oil?" And they'll go, "Yeah, fine."
What's the turnaround time in this? Because it's going to take.
Yeah,
it's not tomorrow morning we go.
No,
home.
it's not like a speedboat you can turn around. This is like an oil tanker. So it could take up to like 2 months. Some of the reports I said could take up to 6 months. So the war is still going to go on for like weeks and months before this is all sorted out, because a lot of the sort of deals and contracts that are in place with these Russian companies, they go well into sort of November. So this is not going to be something that's just going to happen instantly. You're still going to have the soldiers dying for the next couple of months, as Trump said. So. And then it also comes down to, who's going to be able to replace the Russian oil for India and China. The next sort of big supplier is to India, at least, is Iraq, and then obviously we've got Gulf suppliers. Like, they can't just suddenly turn up the taps and have more flying into India. Things don't work that quickly when it comes to the oil industry. So it's not going to be an instant solution instantly.
Well, Sarah, I know you said that it's going to hurt the Kremlin where it hurts. It's not the first time that we've seen sanctions put in, but Putin's responded back and said to this. He's discussed with Trump the impact of the situation. He's almost 180 this and said, listen, Russian oil supplies will have an effect on global prices, including the US. That's a big panic. He's also said that on the global market, this is going to take time, as Shane rightly said so as well. We've heard the part about it being an unfriendly act, but also he said that no self-respecting country ever does anything under pressure, and Russia feels confident and stable. And as I said, we've seen sanctions before. Nothing really seems to work with Putin, does it?
Yes, I mean, the line from the Kremlin expected. Vladimir Putin obviously trying to make the case for the public back home in Russia that there's no concern here, that they'll be able to ride out any economic pain that the US is hoping to impose with these sanctions. Look, we know that Putin has this longevity to stay in this conflict despite the losses that the Russian military have suffered, despite the battlefield defeats. He clearly still feels that the calculation works for him and that he's in it for the long haul. And I think there has been a sense up until now that he's trying to wait out President Trump, talking diplomacy and deals and friendship, and actually just continuing the same tactics on the ground, launching strikes against Ukraine. Just the last few days, we've seen a kindergarten hit, the death toll rising. So clearly, President Trump has woken up to some degree to the fact that something needs to change. And I think, Jono, what's happened here in Washington is you've had two major developments, the sanctions, the most recent, and before that, you had this deal that America cut with NATO allies, whereby they'll be supplying American weapons. They are already doing that to NATO countries, and NATO countries are then supplying Ukraine with those. The big question mark here in Washington at that press conference yesterday and more a little while ago when Zelensky was here again in the White House is over the question of whether the US might be willing to supply Tomahawk missiles. Now, President Trump himself has floated that possibility. It's thought more as a sort of diplomatic pressure tactic to try and get Vladimir Putin's attention. It was felt that that worked. He issued the threat of tomahawks. You know, Russia wouldn't want to see them heading in its direction. And that was ahead of Zelensky's visit. And then you got Vladimir Putin on the phone with the White House. So we heard from President Trump yesterday saying, look, the practicalities mean that right now it doesn't make sense to supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Training alone takes a long time. And so that was his reasoning. He sort of had backtracked a little bit on that threat of Tomahawk missiles. But there's huge discussion here in defense circles around Ukraine's capability for longer range strikes inside Russia. Now, Ukraine recently said that they hit a chemical plant inside Russia. Those were with UK missiles, but using American targeting. And it's that kind of force, along with the economic pressure now with the sanctions, that there's some hope that perhaps that will change the calculation on the ground, that will put the pressure on Russia. But Ukraine's President Zelensky has been absolutely clear. In the wake of the recent attack on the kindergarten, we saw those heartbreaking images of, you know, toddlers being carried out by first responders. Zelensky said, look, Russia simply doesn't respond to anything other than force. So they're very clear that it's going to take a lot more than simply the economic pressure from the sanctions, and possibly more than the military support that the US has given to this point to really change the game on the battlefield now for Ukraine.
Zelensky's had a busy week. Sarah, he flies from you in Washington. He flies to the Coalition of the Willing meeting, which is taking place this week as well. Shane, this has been something that Zelensky has been asking for since 2022. He said, you know, these are the sanctions that we need. Surely he'll take this as a win.
I think he'll take it as a win, but I think sanctions have never been anything that has had sort of the huge impact that everyone thinks it is. It's sort of just generally ceremonial, in a kind of a bit like sort of the tariffs that that Trump uses to hold over countries. I think he needs to go even further than this. It's not just like the oil revenue. He needs to look at a lot of the sort of grey market in terms of crypto that Russia uses to get a lot of its revenue. You know, and he's kind of like the crypto digital president. So I think he needs to sort of use his contacts in that industry to maybe clamp down and cut out some of the revenue coming from that sector. So I think the sanctions need to be a lot wider. But as they said, you know, in the Rystad Energy sort of analysis, that so far over the last 3.5 years, they've had very little impact.
But he's the rollback president, isn't he? He always goes in with the really harsh one and then kind of rolls it back a little bit to something that's more palatable for everyone concerned.
Yeah, go in like with 100% tariffs, pull it back to 50, and then it's just the art of the deal, I guess. So this is kind of like to bring sort of Vladimir, as he calls him, into the, you know, to call up and maybe do something. But it does definitely sound like Trump is just getting frustrated with a lot of sort of these negotiating partners. You know, you've seen the same in Israel with Netanyahu. So I think now he seems to be coming to the end of the line in terms of Putin as well.
That leads us nicely onto our next story. Shane, Sarah, thank you for that. Let's move on. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has arrived in Israel today, becoming the latest senior official to visit the region in recent days. Now, before landing, Rubio shared his thoughts on the Knesset's move to annex the West Bank, warning that it would threaten President Trump's plan for peace in Gaza. Around 700,000 Israeli settlers currently live in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. That is something the UN considers illegal under international law. Shane, we'll come to you first on this. Significant moves by the US. Witkoff, Kushner, Vance, all have been on ground. Rubio's there as well now. Is this different in any other way than just adding more force, I guess, more than anything else, and some weight behind the peace process?
There's a lot of air miles going between Washington and Israel. I liked the comments by J.D. Vance. He's always good for a quite colourful comment, and he was saying that if this vote to annex the West Bank in the Israeli parliament, he said if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid one, and I personally take some insult to it. So that's no sort of beating about the bush. And if you look as well, you know, Time magazine released a cover story today, actually, and you remember Trump didn't like the picture, I presume it was that one, and he said that Israel would lose all of its support from the United States if the annexation happened, and he said it won't happen because I gave my word to the Arab countries, and I thought that was particularly insightful. So I think a lot of this is posturing, to be honest.
Right.
I think it's just sort of a little bit of colour in terms of the ceasefire sort of aftermath. Because if you look at the actual sort of voting, it was brought about not Netanyahu, but by the right-wing elements in the parliament.
We know how that voting played out in the Knesset.
Yeah, so there was 120 potential votes. There was only 49 that were actually cast, so that's 71 lawmakers who abstained, and it came down to 25 to 24. So it was one tiny vote. So again, even Netanyahu didn't support it, and he said it was unlikely to go anywhere. So I fundamentally think that this is just posturing, and it's to keep the right-wing elements in the parliament want to save face, so they brought this about. And the fact that 71 Israeli lawmakers didn't.
They abstained, which really questions how the Knesset works. If 25 votes can sway something and get it passed through, it's a real.
Yeah, so I don't think this is going to go anywhere because it doesn't have the support of Netanyahu, it doesn't have the support of Trump, J.D. Vance, all of these people, as you said, are arriving. So I think these are just part of the dance we're going to have to go through to get from the ceasefire to the actual realistic.
To phase 2, which we're nowhere near yet. Sarah, you in Washington there, how are these visits being perceived in the States? Who's running the country right now? Is it just Trump with hands on deck? Everyone else seems to be in Israel right now. There's a lot of domestic issues that are rumbling on in the background of Gaza and the ceasefire deal and Ukraine and everything else that's going along. But Washington seems to be mostly absent.
Yes, I mean, Jono, you're right. That steady stream of top US officials into Israel to sort of oversee the implementation of the Gaza ceasefire deal. There's some media outlets here who've dubbed it babysitting. But particularly with that vote in Israeli parliament, there is a real sense, although it is largely symbolic, it's not thought it's going to go anywhere, there's a nervousness, and it's added to the sense of nervousness around the fragility of this ceasefire deal that President Trump has put his full weight behind, and the implementation of that. And I think that nervousness demonstrated by the fact that you've had first the Vice President, J.D. Vance, on the ground. Now you've got the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, there for a 2-day visit. And really, again, when the Secretary of State was asked about what he thought about the Israeli parliament's decision, he was very clear that the president would view that as a threat to the ceasefire deal. He said the West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. That is the US stance. They're very, very clear on that right now. And so I think although it's a symbolic move that the Israeli parliament did that, and it hasn't got full support, and it hasn't got the support of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, there is a growing sense of unease, I'd say, here in Washington, that, there is a real fragility around the ceasefire deal. We've seen on the ground there are concerns being raised from various aid agencies. Will this hold? Will we even get to the second phase? Clearly, Washington wanting to keep their eyes and ears on the ground firmly on Israel, the Prime Minister, and what's happening here moving forward right now.
And to take on from that point as well, Shane, earlier we spoke to a doctor from MSF who said that there is still casualties on a daily basis. There's still the humanitarian crisis which is going on. So as we're here sitting talking about the potential fragility of a ceasefire for people on the ground in Gaza, it very much feels like the ceasefire is so fragile that in fact it's almost non-existent. We're hearing that shelling is happening, not at the same level that we were at 2 weeks ago, but there is some shelling. There's unexploded devices when people are returning, Palestinians returning back to their homes to discover these, and the unexploded devices are being detonated. And then there's a yellow line that we're hearing about, which wasn't demarked up until I think yesterday. And people just been unaware of where that yellow line was and therefore getting close to it, and as a result of that, being shot. So there are still people dying on the ground. Yeah, and it's quite sad when you think of like those huge celebrations that we saw in Gaza and in Israel when the peace deal was announced, and there was an interesting sort of comment that came out from one of the executives at Oxfam saying that we expected Gaza to be flooded with aid the moment the ceasefire began, but that's not what we're seeing. So it's like most things, unfortunately, people in sort of 24/7 news and sort of TikTok think everything's going to happen like that. Yeah. When the aid's not flowing straight in, and even Oxfam and I think 40 aid agencies have complained about this, that it hasn't happened quick enough. So I think in terms of like almost all of the points that are in the ceasefire and the peace plan, they're just going to take longer than everyone expects. And I think there's a little bit of, you couldn't say there's a little bit of patience needed, because the aid needs to go in straight away. But in terms of a lot of the negotiation, I think it's just going to take a lot longer than everyone anticipates. We're nowhere near phase 2, that's for sure. No, definitely not. Sarah, Shane, thanks for your thoughts on that. We're going to move on to our next story. And King Charles and Queen Camilla are in Rome for a historic state visit with Pope Leo. The King has become the first British monarch to pray with the Pope since the Reformation in the 16th century. This is hoped that the trip will be viewed as symbolic, as a display of unity between the Church of England and the Catholic Church. Sarah, I'm going to turn to you first on this. The pictures are truly amazing from Italy today. Obviously none in my lifetime, but how significant is it for the monarchy? But also, how significant is this for the Vatican?
It's a hugely significant moment. It's the first time in nearly 500 years since you had the monarchy, the Church of England, break from Rome. And, what a historic day for both the Vatican and for the royal family, for the Church of England. King Charles has really made it very clear that he views this, we've seen those images of them praying together, exchanging the gift, as a way to bring religions together. So it is a hugely symbolic moment, a very historic moment for the royal family, and I think one that will be very welcome as well from both sides in a moment that marks, a really, historic turn, nearly 500 years. And finally, you've got the monarch and the pontiff back together, praying together today with those really incredible images coming out of Rome. Yeah,
the imagery is phenomenal. The symbolism behind it, I'll get into it in a few moments, is quite phenomenal as well. But Shane, both leaders had some poignant messages, which I think a lot of people will have eyes and ears on Vatican while this visit is taking place to hear what's been said.
Yeah, like I haven't seen any sort of direct quotes from the Pope or King Charles so far yet. But it is good optics. I think I kind of feel like I'm throwing cold water on a lot of the stories tonight. But I think on this one, I think it is a little bit like, I think, yes, it's the first time in 500 years. But like I'm a Tudor obsessive, and I can remember like Mary I murdering the Protestants, and then Elizabeth I murdering all the Catholics. Like we've kind of moved on from those days. So I think it's quite nice optics, but I don't think it's going to be sort of hugely sort of scandalous or shocking in the way it would have been, say, maybe like 50 years ago when we're still in the middle of like the troubles in Northern Ireland. I think if that was still ongoing. But I think a lot of the divisiveness between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland in particular, according to sort of surveys that I read, has sort of calmed down. So I think in terms of sort of the optics, yes, it's great that it's happening. But I think King Charles, who has always said that he's going to be a defender of faith rather than the faith, which probably will annoy some of the Church of England.
But there's far few of them today than there would have been, and that's what I think.
Yeah.
We saw him in Manchester at the synagogue following that fatal attack.
Yeah, so
we've seen him be a man of all faiths.
Yeah, I think he's going to do this a lot more, and I think he needs to sort of reach out to maybe some of the more sort of marginalised sort of communities. So I think it's a good element, and I think it's a good indication of where his reign as Charles III, I think he is going, and it's going in a positive way and leaning out to different communities, and he can use his sort of platform to do that. But I don't think it's massively shocking or significant.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's a distraction, Sarah, as well, and probably just the distraction that the royal family needed right now. It is shifting the attention off of Prince Andrew, former the Duke of York, as his royal title is stripped away. It's kind of shifted the attention and the spotlight off that for just a few minutes at least.
Yeah, for a few minutes at least, much needed relief, I'm sure, from the royal family to get a few positive headlines given the context of that scandal surrounding Andrew. Here in the US, you've had the House Oversight Committee that have doggedly been pursuing the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, making noises about the possibility, once the government shutdown is over here in America, of calling for him to come to America to testify. Now, of course, he's a British citizen. He can't be compelled to do that. But it's just, adding fuel to the fire of the questions, the unanswered questions around what Andrew knew, the links, the lies that have been exposed recently. And I think there has been a real sense, certainly in the UK, that the royal family are being damaged by this scandal. So it's not just Andrew that's having to ride this out and face the consequences. It is the wider royal family that, they've been seen alongside him still, even though he's lost his title and stepped back from royal duties. He's still attending some of those events where they're all gathered. And so there is a sense, yes, that this scandal has been particularly damaging. I do, on a lighter note, wonder whether King Charles might have asked the Pope for some advice when it comes to social media or engaging the population, because certainly this is a Pope, we said earlier, Jono, that we dubbed him the TikTok Pope, but he's been so popular, particularly with the younger generation, and it's really engaged, new people to take an interest in the faith and in the religion. So I do think, maybe King Charles can take a few notes from Pope Leo's popularity online.
I think exactly what's happened here, and I've said this, we went from Pope Benedict XVI, and he was quite right-wing. We went to a nice peaceful Pope with Pope Francis, and now we moved into, and as we did say around, the TikTok Pope, he's poping best out of all the popes so far. And I think that's because he's so visible. Every single day there's new videos out about him. He is Donald Trump for the Catholic Church is what he's doing. And it's no controversy whatsoever. It's just a really solid social media team behind him. And I think what they're doing here is bringing the church, and I don't think it was kicking and screaming necessarily, I think it needed to be done, but bringing them into 2025. And I think that's what we're seeing here as well. Now, we did also see something, I don't know if you noticed this, but the dour attire that Queen Camilla was, did you notice this, Sarah? It seemed like it was a big break from her normal outfits when we saw Queen Camilla wearing in Vatican City.
Oh, I didn't know that. What did she wear?
So she's gone for an all-black number. We'll try and get it back up onto the screen, but it's an all-black number. But a whole stack of different regalia is involved behind that, and the pomp and ceremony behind that is that because she's not a queen of a Catholic country, she may not wear white when she meets the Pope. She has to wear something that is black.
Well, do you remember when it was Melania Trump, when Trump there, I think it was the last Pope, and there was a lot of comment over her attire as well.
Wearing something colourful would have been seen as being quite disrespectful to Pope Leo, and so she's gone and she's adhered to the tradition, which not many reigning royal family members from any houses across Europe have done that. So she's actually adhered to that and stuck really rigidly to it, and that's how she was wearing black. But then we saw her afterwards, and she met with the nuns. She changed attire and got into more of a Queen Camilla type outfit and was wearing white. But I still think the imagery, the pictures, everything that went with it, still quite stunning to see, Shane, and something that is a once in a lifetime. Or now we're going to see it maybe potentially every year going forward.
Yeah, it's kind of like, who else do you want King Charles to go visit in terms of if he's going to be breaking down the barriers? Where do you think he's off to next?
Yeah, he's ticked a few boxes already this week. Yeah. We're going to move on to our next story. Shane, Sarah, thank you so much. Irish presidential candidate Catherine Connolly has formally lodged a complaint with the Electoral Commission over a malicious deepfake AI video. The video appeared online this week and showed an AI version of Connolly appearing to announce her withdrawal from Friday's presidential elections. Connolly called the video a disgraceful attempt to mislead voters and to undermine democracy. Here's the clip that she was referring to.
In the last few minutes at a Catherine Connolly campaign event, Catherine Connolly has confirmed her withdrawal from the presidential race.
It is with great regret that I announce the withdrawal of my candidacy and the ending of my campaign.
No, Catherine!
Now that Catherine Connolly has withdrawn from the race, what does this now mean for the upcoming election on Friday? Well, simply put, Friday's election is now cancelled. It will no longer take place as previously planned. But as for Heather Humphreys, she will become the winner automatically and will be appointed tomorrow.
Shane, the timing of this, no coincidence.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a genius who's worked this or if it's somebody who's just a dab hand at Sora, but it was trying to cause maximum damage ahead of the elections which take place tomorrow.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I've been watching Traders a lot, so I'm kind of in that mindset of like, is this a double bluff? Where is, was this put out by the Heather Humphreys campaign, or was it put out as a sympathy vote for the Connolly campaign? I don't know. I've been watching too much Traders, but. I don't think it'll have much impact because she was already, in the very last poll, which was today, she was at 44%, and Humphreys, who was her main rival, our only rival actually, was at 25%. So she was way ahead in the polls. So this is just prankster level stuff that you'd expect of sort of radio DJs and stuff like that. So I don't think it's going to have any impact on the presidential voting tomorrow because one, deepfakes, you're kind of going for the TikTok, the Instagram market, which is young people, and a lot of young people, they're not the demographic that come out and vote in the Irish presidential elections because already I looked up the stats. Presidential elections in Ireland, generally the voter turnout is pretty low.
Why is it so low? Why is it so?
Because the role is very ceremonial. It doesn't have much power. The president in Ireland just signs off on law. The only power they have is to send it back to the Parliament. You know, they open supermarkets, they go and meet dignitaries.
So it's a largely ceremonial role.
Extremely ceremonial. So it's kind of seen as like how relevant and how powerful it is. In the old days, it was always just seen as a sort of retirement home for aging Irish politicians. But it does get a lot of scrutiny. But I think the more sort of thing to look at is the growth of deepfakes, because the start of that clip, I thought, where it was the sections in that on the news reports were extremely good. The bit with Catherine herself wasn't great, I don't think, but also as well, that's RTE, and it makes me nostalgic watching those presenters. But you would just go on the RTE website and find out.
In the age, I think, of information where you get it in 30 seconds, I guess, Sarah, that's the question. It's not the first time, probably not going to be the last time that this is going to happen. This is AI being used to spread misinformation. And as we know, social media, 15-second hits, it's like wildfire. It's everywhere within a matter of minutes. It's a concern.
It's absolutely everywhere. And, Jono, even being used by the President of the United States. We've had our own AI scandal here over the last week with the President tweeting out an AI video showing him flying a fighter jet over some protesters and dropping some not very nice material, shall we say, on their heads. But look, it just goes to show, the spread of this. I think worth going through, because as Shane said there, you know, there are some ways that you can spot the AI fake videos. And this is what the experts are telling you. So for anyone watching, if you want to have a bit more information about what to look out for, they say, yes, just as Shane mentioned there, check the source. Where the video comes from. Is that expecting too much from the audience in this day and age? Because we are all scrolling on our phone. It's just short little clips of videos. Do we have time to go and check the source on all of these? But there's also ways, we're told by the experts, that you can actually see within the video itself. So sometimes they say to slow down the video if you're a bit skeptical. If you take it frame by frame, sometimes the details like vanishing hands will give it away. Sometimes watermarks are blurred out on the videos, and also the faces. Whilst AI is very good at generating those faces, they're not very good at filming them. So whereas with normal camera work, you get a little bit of wobbly movement around that and you get the natural light, with AI videos, it tends to be like a smooth gliding effect. But look, these are all like minuscule clues. We all work in TV, and I'm regularly caught out by videos that you watch, like this one, where you start off thinking, this looks really genuine. And that ability to produce that quality of AI deepfakes now is in basically everyone's hands. It doesn't take a huge amount of technological capability. The resources are there for basically anyone to start producing these videos. The consequences, as we're seeing in this case, potentially could be very serious.
And I think, as Shane said, this one, to me, it seemed a bit obvious in parts, but in some parts I wasn't sure. I'm glad, Sarah, that you've brushed up on how to spot a fake, because right now we want to try and put both of you to the test to actually see if you can spot deep fake videos. We're going to show you some videos. First off, take a look at this not so cute kitty cat. This went viral this week, actually. It's a cat that puts a mouse into its owner's mouth. Let's have a little listen, a little watch this. I'll let you both watch it. This is a truly terrifying moment when a kitty cat takes a turn for the worse. Shane, I'll pass to you first. Do you think it's real or fake?
I saw this one during the week, and I have a cat, so it probably is real, yeah.
You think it's real?
Yeah.
Sarah, what about you?
This is so difficult, because I've been bought a mouse by a cat before as like a gift. I think they think it's like a pleasant thing to do. I'm going to say fake, not in the mouth, no. That's the detail that I just think that's too far-fetched. I don't think the cat would put it in someone's mouth.
Okay, well, I'll tell you at the end of that, it's an for you, Shane, and it's a ding for you, Sarah. That's a point for you, well done. That is, in fact, a fake video. That is not a real cat. That's not a real person. That has been entirely generated by AI. Right, there's another one. This is a news report from this week. Let's have a quick look at this one. Now, this lady here is on the screen. Let's have a look at that. She's just here to give a news report. It's exactly what we see every single day on the TV. Shane, what do you think?
I don't know, because the news reports in the original Irish
Nice walkie-talkie scene there as well, where she walks towards the camera.
Yeah.
Real fluid, real nice. And we've seen AI and how it has that grainy kind of an image to it, watermarks, blurred out backgrounds.
Yeah.
Sarah just told you everything to look for, and I feel like you're just completely ignoring that.
Yeah, it's all fake.
All right, Sarah, what do you think? Real or fake?
Jono, you're giving Shane a hint. You can't give him any clues. Listen, guys, I have to say I know that presenter is for sure an AI fake. She was used
fake.
to highlight by the channel.
It is fake. It is fake.
Yeah, I think that's my point, though, right? Do I get a point and a half for giving the background to that story?
You're on two, Sarah. Take the win. And finally, this one is a video of a fisherman and his boat, and an unexpected guest who jumped on board. Have a quick look at this. I mean, terrifying as well. A lot of these are videos of sharks, aren't they? There we go. What do we think, guys? Real or fake? Real or fake?
I think it has to be fake.
Fake? That's what I would have said as well. Sarah?
It's fake.
I'm afraid, guys, you're both getting on that one. That is a
real.
real clip. You've unfortunately fallen at the last hurdle on that one. Sarah, you take the win. We'll be sending something to Washington in the next 6 to 8 business weeks for you. Right, it's that time of the show where Sarah and Shane have brought some of the quirkier stories of the day to us, as if that wasn't one. Sarah, let's start with you. A story of hope from Gaza, from the children in Gaza.
Yes, it is a great story. So the UN have said that now that they have the ceasefire in place, as shaky and tenuous as it might be, they're going to be ramping up supplying education to the children of Gaza. Over the last few weeks, guys, we've seen some video emerging, and definitely in the wake of the ceasefire, children starting to return to school. And of course, around the world, it's been back to school season, sort of late September. And so you've seen the children in Gaza going not to their schools, which have largely been destroyed across most of Gaza, but to these temporary shelters set up by aid agencies like the UN, where they're getting their education. Some really remarkable videos of people celebrating their exam results, and then of the children right now returning to education, to studying, but in these temporary shelters that are being supplied. Now, the UN has said they're hoping to ramp it up to some 300,000 students now that the ceasefire is in place, with 8,000 teachers saying that they're going to be involved in this effort. So, it's been 2 long, deadly years for the children of Gaza. They've paid such a heavy price for the conflict. And now a sort of moment of hope, watching them getting back to school. The aid agencies, though the warning coming from the ground from a lot of aid agencies is that the aid needs to be getting through to Gaza much faster. This is a positive step, the UN announcing that they're going to be widening their education program in this
For sure.
way.
It's a glimmer. I think that's what we all need right now, is a glimmer of hope. Shane, yours is to a man who just seems out to annoy the entire world with this.
Yeah, unfortunately mine's less worthy, I have to say. So it's a guy called Lawrence Watkins, and he's from New Zealand, and he's in his 70s. So he's in the Guinness World Record for the longest name. So he's got 2,253 middle names, which is the longest in the world. I'm not going to give them all because it takes 20 minutes apparently, and we don't have the time. And apparently he's got like Latin, English, Maori, Japanese names. And when he got married, they had to give all of the names for it to be legally binding. So that took 20 minutes. His wife had to wait. And when he originally tried to do this back in 1990, unsurprisingly, the New Zealand government said, nope, you can't do this. So he went all the way to the New Zealand High Court to get this passed. And so he's now got 2,249 names, which I'd imagine is an epic passport.
What an awful... Is it on his passport?
They didn't put them all in it because they said they were so named. They just put 2,249 extra names because they couldn't fit them all in on it. But I'll give you his quote. He said, people don't always get my humour, but I like to stand out.
It's all for Guinness World Record. I just think, just try and eat 14 Jaffa cakes, mate. It's so much easier than eat 7 Raffaellos. It gets you a Guinness World Record anyway. Well, listen, thanks to both of our guests for joining us on the show. Shane McGinley, news editor at Arabian Gulf Business Insight, and our Crown Victorious champion tonight on spotting deep AI fake videos, Sara Firth, live in Washington. Thank you both very much. That's all from us on W News Extra for tonight. Don't forget, as always, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on X. And G&T is on the way next. Goodbye for now.